This is your first year in the role. You actually are being baptized by fire. You already mentioned the incident in the bathroom. That sounds scary as fuck. You found your way out of that. Good job. But like, you had mentioned there's some mistakes that are made, and there's moments where you think, oh shit. Like, if they went to explain that, would they be legally able to tell said company, like, by the way, you have to keep this confidential? Or couldn't the company technically be like, the government just told us this dude's working for them?
Well, it depends on the status, right? So it is a felony to disclose the identity of an officer, right? So
even if you're not in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like if somebody in the public knew about the identity of an agency officer that was working at the time, you're not allowed to like tell
Really?
everybody. Yeah, it's a crime.
I never knew that.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
You never know who you're going to run into
Right.
with this shit.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of you guys out there. Okay. Yeah, because we all know the bad shit the CIA's done, and we talk about that shit all the time on the show, whether it be MK Ultra, potentially whacking a fucking president, definitely whacking a fucking president, things like that, But I am a realist. You talked about the gray area earlier. I'm very much a guy who lives in the gray. I recognize that, like, the people who are pissed about everything about the CIA, who are like, defund the CIA. Well, that's probably not the brightest move. That said, I also recognize why, like this scenario I'm thinking of, I can't give details of it. That might make it easier for people. But I fully understand why the CIA would have wanted to have someone there, because it had nothing to do with the company. The company was doing nothing wrong. Had nothing to do with them. It had to do with the fact that they do business around the world. And there were some bad people who, completely unbeknownst to them, could take advantage of some things. And the CIA basically just said, don't worry about it. We want to cover that up. Yet this is supposed to be something that's like not legal. I don't really understand that when we live in a global world now where everything's connected. Like, technically, you kind of have to do things. There's no way around doing things in the United States, no?
Right. And so there's overlaps to where you have to notify. So there were federal people that knew when I would be in the United States, and the Attorney General's office knew of some stuff as well. And so I've been in states where the special agent in charge, like for the DEA, for instance, had known about that. We had to disclose, like, hey, this guy's working here, right? So there's all kinds of lawyers that get involved in this, and they try to play it by the book more than people would think.
You ride by the office, give them a little salute.
Right.
What's up, DEA? Fuckos.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. So this first year, you can't say how you were getting placed to do certain things, but you're doing certain things basically to establish yourself as what your skill set is, money laundering. And then you end up in this bar, which you already also explained was because you were trying to be seen in places like that.
Right.
And you fall into this, I guess like the luckiest lottery winner in the bar.
Pretty much.
Where this dude, completely unbeknownst to you, turns out to be in a top 4 biker gang.
Yeah.
Now that you
and
got...
a senior officer in it.
He was a senior officer.
Not just a guy. He was a senior officer in that organization.
Was there any, was he wearing, bling like you or something that you could tell, like he was loaded?
No.
No.
He looked like a normal Joe.
Wow. All right, so he was a good criminal.
Yeah.
All right, so now that you're told that information by your people, actually, real quick, how would you communicate? If you're off the books and everything, how does that even work to communicate with base without revealing classified information?
Sure. They're just classified types of technology that would be used for me to communicate, or I would physically just meet with my boss during this time.
Like Leo and The Departed kind of deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd have a clandestine meeting with somebody to pass the information along.
And in that first year, before we get to this biker guy, this is your first year in the role. You actually are being baptized by fire. You already mentioned the incident in the bathroom. That sounds scary as fuck. You found your way out of that. Good job. But you had mentioned there's some mistakes that are made, and there's moments where you think, oh shit. Did you have anxiety off the charts just while you're adjusting to now being actually out in the field? Or how did you actually process moving into the role officially?
I think you just give yourself to it as much as possible, right? And so all these hesitations that the real you would have, these don't exist. That's not how this persona thinks, right? So you just dive into it and you build in things that help your mind right?
Like what?
Like bravado, like how somebody would handle a certain situation, right? So when you're working cover like that, you are constantly planning. When I go in here, if this person says this, I'm going to say that. If they say this, I'm going to say that. If this happens, I'm going to do that. You don't want to think of these things as they're happening. You want to consider as many potential scenarios as possible and think through what your reaction would be, whether that's what you say back or, you know, what you do physically. But yeah, there were some mistakes. And one of the things I realized early on was I didn't know shit about riding motorcycles, and that's going to be a problem. So I found this guy who was a tweaker, and he had been like just Mr. Harley Davidson his whole life. And I didn't know it at the time, but he kind of he didn't look like a real outlaw. He looked like a wannabe or like an undercover cop. But you know, he had like 50 patches all over him that said, you know, like clever little phrases and stuff like that. And this guy, everybody called him Teeth. That was his nickname because he had like 3 of them. And he was a maniac.
How'd you find him?
Hanging out in the bar,
okay.
Right? And so he wasn't one of the made dudes, but I needed somebody that I could ask questions to without them getting like too bristly about it. And this guy, when he would drink, you could not shut him up. So I could ask him.
That's a winner for you.
Anything. And he used to carry this plastic whiskey jug in his saddlebag on his bike, and he would sip on it like at a red light. This guy was wild. Like, he was all about it. But I almost got into trouble with him a couple of times was the mistake, right? So where I was at, there had been a big gang-on-gang shooting. I think 9 or 10 people had died in it recently. So everybody that was in that world was on very high alert at the time. And he's showing me how to ride my bike and kind of mentoring me a little bit and, you know, his criminal ways, his very low-level criminal ways. And he's like, hey, let's, you know, on Saturday, let's meet up early. We'll go bar hopping. I'll show you around town. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be fantastic. So it's like 11 in the morning on a Saturday, and we take off. And he takes me to this first bar. It's not a bar. It's a tiny house. And there's like picnic tables out front of a big parking lot, this gravel parking lot. And there's like 8 or 9 guys sitting at these picnic tables outside. And so we pull up next to all these bikes. He backs in. I'm like, wow, this is an interesting place. And we're walking up to this bar, hypothetically. And all these guys have this look on their face like you just asked, you know, what color their sister's panties were or something. Just a mixture of confusion and anger. And we go in. It's not a bar. There's like a regular fridge, you know, like from Walmart in there. There's no bar top. There's a couple pool tables and a bunch of signs that indicate like this is one of the gangs. It wasn't a public bar. It was their clubhouse. And so right after we get in, he grabs a beer, and of course these guys are coming in to ask us, what the fuck are you doing here? And so he's playing hard to get with them, and I don't know why he's like toying with this guy because he's pretty much about to get his brake speed off. And then all of a sudden he points at the wall, and there's a picture of like this old member like from the 80s or whatever, and this little kid. He's like, I'm that little kid. That's my dad. His dad was a member of the club formerly. But he thought it was funny. He played this out for like 10 minutes while they're looking to, you know, beat the heck out of us.
Oh, he just enjoyed it.
He thought it was the funniest thing. But I was like,
what are
wow.
you? And the whole time, what are you doing? Just like, I barely know him.
Yeah, who the fuck is this guy? You know,
yeah,
like,
fuck.
Yeah, somebody call about the electrical work here. You know, like,
yeah. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.